What's going on, everybody? Welcome to your Week 10 edition of the Pro Football Focus Show here on Rotogrinders. I'm back. I missed out last week. My dude Andy Means filled in for me, but happy to be back with Mr. Ian Hartitz. You can find him on Twitter at iHartitz. That's IHARTITZ. Ian, my man, how did last week go? I was unavailable on short notice. We had to get a fill in. How'd it go, dude?
Good to have you back, man. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while, man. I've been a lot of different co-hosts here over the past few weeks, but it was a solid show anyway. We were able to do, I think, a pretty decent job with the cash lineups. Got some of the best bets in there. Unfortunately, we were looking at Derrick Henry as the pivot to Dalvin Cook, but every week is Dalvin Cook week, I guess, in the year 2020. So we were talking about this slate beforehand, man. Maybe got some easier cash game lineups to build, but I think we got some interesting things to talk about in terms of tournaments, at least.
Yeah, tournaments, do you want to play the guy who's going to be 60% owned in whatever tournament, maybe 80% in your single entries and things like that? Do you want to take the free square, or do you want to pivot on it? We've got some plays to mix it up with that. But Ian, I'm happy to be back. I've got your Manscaped manifesto, we'll call it today. Here, we'll hear about that in just a little bit. Pulled up on PFF. You guys ever want to read that? You can get that with a PFF Edge sub over there. We basically like to start off the show looking from a top-down approach. All these things head-to-head, EPA, battles in the trenches, explosive pass plays. What do you got for us this week that's looking good? Let's start with the explosive pass plays. There's some weather going out there this week. I want to note that first in both Green Bay and in Cleveland. Maybe we won't get those explosive pass plays. Say that 3 times fast. But yeah, what's going on with this chart you got up here on your article?
As you said, more top down, like no single one of these charts should be the whole reason why you play someone. But, once you see a couple start going their way, you look at the weather and the workload stuff too. That's when we can start to feel a little more confident about a guy. So again, I deal with these charts whenever we talk about a matchup. It's okay. We got the 9th best passing offense versus the 28th worst, passing defense. This helps make that a one-way street, gives us one metric for that. So looking at the passing games that are especially set up for success, it's Aaron Rodgers and everyone else, particularly with Lamar Jackson and Kirk Cousins being off the main slate. They would have some other good matchups too, but truly, we got 2% difference between Rodgers and everyone else. Just a matter of that win, man. And I would just say the Jaguars secondary is so just flimsy, and Rodgers, and Devontae, I would not be afraid in tournaments of pivoting off the chalky Aaron Jones and really just trying to get up there to Devontae. I know he's not going to be going too far under the radar, but again, I just don't think, even with some Mother Nature interference, I don't think the Jaguars can slow down this passing attack. Also note that Jared Goff, Big Ben, Alex Smith to some extent, even Tom Brady are also looking a little bit better than usual. Some guys that could have a little bit more of a rough day than normal. Carson Wentz, which, hey, it's been up and down all year. Finally getting some weapons back, but we'll see. Daniel Jones, Tua, and Russell Wilson is popping as someone that could have a little trouble making some explosive plays against this Rams defense. Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, we know they got the blue chip stars out there, and they've just been so well coached throughout this year, man. One of these defenses that I think we wondered, like, would they kind of remain this elite unit without Wade Phillips and kind of losing Nikel Roby-Coleman and some of these other guys? Answer has been a resounding yes so far, but they're about to face the final boss in Russell Wilson and company. We'll see how these numbers look after that matchup.
Yeah, I think the Rams, look at their schedule. It's a bunch of pumpkin matchups for the most part. So I'm still going to believe in Russ cooking in that game. Believe me and everyone else out there in DFS land is going to be all over Seattle this week. Let's scroll down just a little bit. Let's take a look at a couple of the other metrics here. Let's talk about pace. Always important. The more snaps you get, the more fantasy points your players are allowed to score in theory, because, hey, they're just playing a lot more snaps on the field. What are we looking at for pace this week? Is there anything really standing out?
Man, one game stands out above all the rest, and that is the Buffalo Bills at the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah, man. Usually we're looking at this, and the Dallas Cowboys are just continue to try to run the fastest pace possible, or also this team. But, they're on bye. So now, truly, there is not another matchup even within 2.5 seconds of this game in terms of combined situation neutral pace. So Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, all their weapons, fire them up with confidence, everybody. We did not have weather issues in this one as well, which is always great to see. Some slower pace matchups, 49ers at the Saints, and then also the Jaguars at the Packers. Talked about some of the weather stuff. A game that before, we were talking before the show, I was kind of looking at that over, wondering, what do we have here? But you add in the weather, you add in the slow potential pace, probably one that we're going to want to stay away from, mostly on the Jaguar side of the ball with respect to James RB1's son, of course.
Yeah, in Buffalo, you saw him basically unleash Josh Allen. They tricked Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's like, man, we would have crushed them if they would have only ran the ball. Newsflash, Pete Carroll. Good teams will pass the ball against you when you're so horrific at defending the pass. I'm expecting Arizona and Buffalo to go at it, and I think they're going to have an unleash Josh Allen again this week here, just passing because they know Arizona is going to put up a bunch of points. You add that with a pace. This is where all the DFS exposure is going to this week. Well, we've got a bunch of plays from this game later, but always want to take a note of pace out there.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at pressure. This can help you find some defenses or maybe help you find some under the radar deep passing matchups if a team cannot get to the quarterback. What are we looking at on that this week?
Yeah, two guys stand out as being particularly screwed. Mr. Daniel Jones. Look, only the Jets and Giants have been pressuring at least 40% of their dropbacks this year. And Daniel Jones, like you see some of these guys, like our next quarterback, Joe Burrow, where the guy has a high pressure rate, but they're getting the ball out of their hands pretty fast. Like it's a mix of Daniel Jones holding the ball too long and the Giants offensive line not being able to keep guys off him. So, we see one or two decent drives from the Giants per week, I feel like, but it's Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram getting the bulk of their targets. Everything else, I just want to stay away from because, again, I think this could be a matchup where the Eagles just eat at the line of scrimmage, make things difficult for everyone involved. Other guy really standing out as someone that could be under a bunch of pressure is Joe Burrow against this Blitzburg defense. I have Burrow ranked as like my QB 17 this week. Normally, I've been happy to have him around that QB1 borderline, but it's these Ravens matchups and the Steelers matchups. Everywhere else, it's fine. Go back to Joe Burrow, QB1 well. Look, but it's been the kryptonite of this Bengals offense all season has been him trying to overcome just this constant pressure. Nobody does it better in Pittsburgh. Some quarterbacks that could be having all day to throw. Big Ben, but we wonder how much they're really going to ask him to do, with this kind of banged up state he's in. Tom Brady against the Panthers, kind of like this is a sneaky bounce back spot, man. After how bad they look on Sunday night, we know that's not going to be the case every single week. And then Aaron Rodgers versus Jaguars, we talked about that a little bit. And then Jared Goff versus Seahawks. Man, like we'll get to our DFS plays here, but Jared Goff is someone that I am never on usually because I just know I want some sort of a rushing floor. But against the Seahawks secondary, who can't put up points on these guys? So I do think Goff and particularly Woods and Kupp are more than viable plays this week.
Yeah, you got to hope the Rams they want to run the ball, but you got to hope they're smart enough. I think McVay's smart enough to maybe want to pass the ball this week. I'm going to go out on a ledge. We'll see. We'll see if McVay is actually a pretty sharp coach. I think he is. You mentioned about Joe Burrow. I'm probably a little higher on him simply because without Joe Mixon just got ruled out. We were sort of expecting that. There are a couple injuries I'm scouring Twitter during the show for. But with Gio back there, they're going to pass the ball 60 times in this game if they have to. They'll throw it 70 times if they have to. He just drops back. He slings it. It might not be very efficient against the Steelers, but the sheer number of attempts I think is going to be pretty high for Burrow this week. Moving on to let's go to the battle in the trenches in the run game. You want to take a look at this. Anything really standing out? Dalvin Cook isn't on the main slate this week. Who are you playing?
It's a good question, man. Look, so have you seen anything final on Kenyon Drake yet? Probably not because they're West Coast, but
I have not. Has not crossed yet.
Yeah, he's been limited all week with this ankle injury. Sounds like he has a chance to play. If not, though, go straight back to Chase Edmonds. Well, everybody, he had the exact role we were hoping for: 25 carries, 95% snaps, and again, he has a great matchup against the Bills. And look, I've adjusted this yards before contact to make it only 4 running backs because I saw the New York Giants popping up as one of the best offensive lines, and I was like, no, something is wrong there. That's not right. And it was because some of the quarterbacks that are ripping off big runs were kind of influencing this metric. Obviously, Kyler does that, but Kyler, he's such a threat that just having him there has helped the running backs even rack up yards before contact on their carries as well. So, truly this Arizona Cardinals rushing offense, I know Kyler's been the one. He's on pace for 16 rushing scores, but it's okay for Edmonds or Drake to score in one of these other weeks. I would say, they're more flex options. You can't fire them up with as much confidence if both guys are active. But if we get Drake out, again, go back to that Chase Edmonds. Well, also Aaron Jones deserves to be, one of the chalkiest running backs of the slate against this Jaguars defense. Also seeing, the Lions are popping up a little bit against Washington. I don't think there's probably enough there. Maybe some DeAndre Swift we could talk ourselves into, but a little bit thin there in terms of usage. And finally, one that's maybe going a little bit on the radar is the Cleveland Browns against the Houston Texans. Like, look, we're riding the Aaron Jones hype because it's a bad weather matchup, but bad weather in Cleveland too. Arguably a worse rush defense in Houston. And I know it's Kareem Hunt back, but there's no OBJ now. So if there's ever going to be a time where it's easier than ever for the Browns to really prioritize getting the ball in the hands of their top 2 playmakers, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, it should be in this cake matchup.
A couple of injury things just sort of crossed. It looks like Ben Roethlisberger is going to come off the COVID list. He's going to have an extended walkthrough tomorrow. Looks like he's going to play, so no worries about that Pittsburgh offense in my eyes. And then one I was watching personally is Jair Alexander for the Packers. Today practiced for a minute. then went back inside, didn't come back out. I got to say, he's looking pretty iffy to play. That is the win game and Green Bay, but we've got Laviska Shenault already out for Jacksonville. DJ Shark, if Jair Alexander is out there, Chris Conley is going to be in some people's DFS lineups. Just keep an eye on that. I know a lot of people listen to this on podcast afterwards, late Friday or into the weekend. Just keep an eye on that as the week progresses. All right, let's close this out with your mismatch manifesto. Give me a couple other stats we got to look at.
Yeah, final thing I like looking at EPA per play with the offense and defenses just gives you a good, kind of feel for which offenses are especially set up for success and the ones that are popping up this week. Packers, Cardinals, and Browns, and then offenses that should be particularly screwed in trying to move the ball. Giants, Patriots, and Sunday night, which makes sense. And then also the Bengals against the Steelers. But we've had a trend we talked about on the show throughout the year where you bet the over when there's two positive offenses, and a big bounce back last week. We had a lot of them. It was like the worst week ever was in week 8, and almost every single one was impacted pretty badly by weather. So again, do not take one of these charts and just blindly bet anything because of it. But when we have offenses on both sides of the field that should be able to move the ball, obviously that is a situation that we should be liking the over if it's a reasonable mark. So some ones that stand out this week: Texans, Browns, Jaguars, Packers. I know we have the weather concerns, so don't blindly do it. But Bills, Cardinals is the one that we've seen that over skyrocket, but I still don't know if it's high enough, man. So overs are 32, 24, and 2 on the season. Bounce back with a 6-1 record last week. So don't be afraid to go back to well here. I think maybe the Seahawks and Rams are another one that could provide a little bit. And also 49ers and Saints. We'll get to that a little bit more, but I think that probably is my favorite over pick of the week.
All right. I want to remind all you guys, if you want to check out Ian's stuff or anything else, player grades, wide receiver matchups, you can just get lost over at PFF with all the cool stuff they have over there. If you want to check it out, go get yourself an Edge subscription. They have some bigger, higher tier subscriptions if you really want the most advanced stats you can get your hands on. Before we talk about our bets, I want to remind everybody about the single entry series going on over at FanDuel. It's been running week 6. It still runs through week 13. It's not too late to start entering the leaderboard. If you've already entered once or twice, it's not too late to still have a chance to get to the $20,000 final. It's 3 buy-in levels, $5, $33, and $100. Your top 4 combined scores count within each buy-in tier, right? So if, let's say, week 6, you had a really good score, you can still pound out weeks 10, 11, 12, 13 in an attempt to have your 4 highest scores look really good. The top 2 finishers in each tier advance to a $20,000 final. That's over on FanDuel, the Rotogrinders single entry series. And I'll even tell you, even if you aren't going to play them all, it's single entry tournament, and there's a lot of money at stake this week, just in a normal tournament. So go check that out over on FanDuel. All right, best bets of the week. Let's jump into this one. Side note, I was not here last week, Ian. I know we're not supposed to play parlay sometimes, but screw that. I like to have fun. I had myself a nice one. I'm flush. I don't like a lot of the lines this week. I think pretty much all season long I've been taking, plus or minus in the points and things like that. I've joined the overs club for this week. So I got 3 overs I really like. Obviously, the first one, like you, I don't think 56.5 is too high on that Bills and Cardinals. To me, this screams like 35-30, something like that. All these games score a ton of points. Both these teams are really good on offense, and I don't think either team is all too great on defense. It's in a dome. That's an easy one for me. I like Seattle Rams. All these Seattle games score like 80 points. I don't know why this is sitting here at 54.5 when it's inside at the Rams facility. That looks like a really nice one to me. And then my sneakier one is the Raiders Broncos at 50.5. The Raiders score points. The Raiders defense stinks. Drew Lock has Jerry Jeudy. He's got Noah Fant. They'll be able to run the ball if they want. And Drew Lock has no problem chucking it down the field. He's not very good when it happens, but he has no problem trying to make some big plays, even if they're somewhat ill-advised. Hell, give me a pick 6. That's just more points. There's a lot of ways for points to be scored in this game. So I've got 3 overs, the overs club for me. I'm heading to the book. I got the Rams and the Bills when they were a little lower on Monday. But after the show, I'm going to get that Raiders Broncos one too.
100%, man. That's why we were hyping up Jerry Jeudy on this show last week. Like, even if it doesn't go that smooth in the first couple quarters, we know Drew Lock is more than capable of bringing them back. So I got 3 here. Was able to go 2-1 last week. Nailed the Ravens and Raiders. Missed on the Cardinals. So my bad, everybody. But I feel good about these ones here moving forward. Seahawks plus 1.5. Look, I understand how bad the Seahawks defense is, but come on. This is Russell Wilson, arguably the MVP if the season would end today. I just think to have him giving points against Jared Goff, I know it's in LA, not Seattle, but no, I just think that in this situation, pick the better quarterback, and when it's a somewhat evenly just evenly matched a matchup. And I think just look, good offense beats good defense. Seahawks have the better offense here. Even if the Rams have the better defense, give me the better QB. I like the 49ers Saints to go over 49. Whenever we got a nice game in the dome, it's in a weather week, it's good just not have to worry about the weather for once. So I understand Mullins has been pretty mad, but him or just Bethard, whoever they've been putting out there, they still usually put up points eventually with Kyle Shanahan calling the plays. So they were so depleted at wide receiver last week. They're at least getting Brandon Ayuk back for this game. So it looks like Deebo Samuel will continue to be out, but we got Ayuk, we got Hasty, we got McKinnon, we got some guys against the Saints defense that I understand they shut down the Buccaneers last week, but more often than not this year, they've been fairly mediocre to average. So, I really expect the Saints to be able to put up points on the 49ers. We've seen them, really since they've been banged up. Whenever they face just a good functioning offense, they just don't really have the manpower at this point to do much against it. So I definitely see the Saints, finishing kind of mid-high 30s. I think the 49ers can find the end zone a couple times to push this one into the 50s. Last one, I like the Lions and Washington football team under 46.5. Maybe my first under call of the season here. Guys, see what this line kind of settles at. But look, Stafford without Kenny Galladay, only 3 games all year that he hasn't had an average target depth over 10 yards. It's just kind of been a broken offense without Galladay in the system. We just haven't really seen them resembling the same just high-flying offense from last season. So you add to that Washington has actually been pretty good against the pass, and they have this defensive line just full of beasts with Chase Young and company over there. So I think that's gonna be a problem. And then the Washington side of things, man, like my biggest concern betting the under would be Alex Smith turning the ball over so much that the Lions could be able to score, because great story and everything, but if we look at this guy, all he wants to do is check down, and he's been erratic doing it. It's not even like he's been this game manager that's taking what the defense is giving him and avoiding mistakes. Like, no, still making mistakes, not making big plays. I don't see either offense having much success, and thus give me under.
I think the Redskins' biggest mistake was moving away from Haskins too early. They should have just let him play out and see what it is. They invested the pick. I know it's not with the same coaches, but you got to see what you have. Maybe they already know and they made up their mind, but.
Well, dude, and here's my biggest issue with that, because everyone pulls out that article where they go, oh, Haskins was gloating for throwing for over 300 yards in a loss against the Ravens. So as an organization, you let whatever that report is get out to try to make everyone feel better about you benching this guy. Way to tank his value like even more at Washington. Whether you really think Haskins is the answer or not, if you don't think he's your quarterback, that's fine. The Cardinals didn't think Rosen was their quarterback, so they traded him and picked Kyler Murray. But to enter this year with Haskins and to sit him behind a guy that is not giving them any better of a chance to win at this point, it's ridiculous, man.
Even if they think Haskins was bad, they should want to lose as many games as possible. And I just didn't understand that. Now you got Alex Smith. He looks extremely scared. I mean, for good reason, right? But he's just checking down in here. So I like that under call here. And I do want to mention that Seahawks plus 1.5. I like that one quite a bit. I'm going to go get that one as soon as the show's over.
Let's get it. You and me both.
All right. Before we trim our player pools, everybody, it's time to trim something else. That's right. We're talking about Manscaped. Autumn is in the air, and Manscaped is here to ensure you don't carve your pumpkins when you're grooming. And by pumpkins, you mean your boys downstairs. In fact, Manscaped is on a mission to change the way you approach caring for your balls. And great news, if you live overseas, they've released their products in the UK, Canada, and Australia. Rotogrinders, we're global, man. Everyone listens to us. You can get Manscaped basically just about wherever you are. Let's not forget, it's also the best trimmer for your butt, balls, and body. Anywhere you want to go, Manscaped will help you out there. The Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer offers a replaceable ceramic blade with advanced skin-safe technology, which helps reduce grooming accidents. Their new Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer. I just hit 40, Ian. I need that all the time. I'm up in there jamming things in there all the time. Use the same skin-safe technology when you're trimming those delicate nose hairs of yours. The Crop Care Kit includes the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, and pumpkin spice lattes and ball deodorant go hand in hand in the fall. So get your hand on that. They've got a body wash, the Crop Cleanser. You can use it on your hair, whatever you want. The Crop Mop ball wipes. You never know when your opportunity strikes. If you got a quick date or something like that, you got to be prepared. You don't want to stink at Thanksgiving dinner either. If you suffer from stank foot, they have a product for you, the Foot Duster. Do you need some foot deodorant? It's a free gift if you buy the whole pack. It's the cooling tea tree oil. Offers a pleasant experience for even the stankiest feet. Lets you take your shoes off with confidence. They've got some cologne, the Manscaped Refined Cologne. It's a cost-effective way to smell clean and fresh for your dates. They're all vegan, right? So that's a lot of things. My wife, she's vegetarian, cruelty free, dye free, vegan, sulfate free. All the stuff is good for you. You're not going to hurt your man parts when you're out there using your Manscaped stuff. You want to get in on the action, 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com with code ROTO. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com with code ROTO. Make your balls a priority this fall.
Well done.
That's a lot going on there, right? I gotta get some. The nose hair trimmer is what I really need here, Ian. It's starting on the ears here too, man. It's not looking pretty over here in Divine Land. But anyway, let's jump up to week 10, and we started off this show. Chalk cash games this week are going to look very similar, I think, across a lot of teams, because we have the free square of Mike Davis, specifically on DraftKings, but even on FanDuel, his price is a lot lower than it should be here, which is allowing a lot of the lineups to look the same. You're allowed to get a lot of really good players on your team, which has been a little bit in question for the past couple of weeks. So I'm going to start at quarterback. I don't understand. You've got the Bills in Arizona, your cash game quarterback on whatever site you play on. I don't care what it is. It has to be Josh Allen or Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's $500 more on DraftKings. If the $500 gets you something you really like at receiver or a third running back or get you the defense you want, I'm okay using Josh Allen. I prefer Kyler Murray, but that's basically where I'm at. The Cards, I look at this. They only have 7 running back rush attempts inside the 5 all season. Kyler Murray is their running back when they get down. He's so elusive. He never gets hit. He's in there. Allen went nuclear against the Seahawks. I'm expecting that sort of basically air raid offense from the Bills again. And Arizona, 23rd in team pass grade coverage at PFF, 29th in pass rush grade at PFF. Allen's going to have all day to throw. I just don't see how you don't use one of those two guys.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's between those two and literally nobody else, I think, in cash games. If you really want to go try to go down the well to, this Raiders Broncos game and go with Carr or Lock, okay, but I'm with you and thinking that those guys are probably better GPP options than at cash games. And also give me Kyler Murray. He's on pace for 16 rushing touchdowns. He's essentially having Lamar Jackson 2019 season, but even more passing upside. Yeah. Exactly. It is better. Literally nobody in the history of the NFL has ever averaged more fantasy points per game at the QB position than Kyler Murray is at this very moment. So yeah, for only $500 more, give me him. And I also just think that, even if Tre'Davious White is in or out, Kyler to Hopkins to Kirk, I think that's the best kind of stack you can make between the two to go into your cash games with. Looking at some of the GPPs. So I, mentioned those, guys a little bit lower down. You can talk about them a little more, but I do think maybe, we're seeing probably more ownership at the top or the bottom. Might have some chance to get a little bit contrarian in the middle with Drew Brees at 6,400 and Jared Goff at 6,500. We talked about the Seahawks defense, man. Absolutely nobody can slow them down. They have given up an additional 300 yards this season to wide receivers in the next closest defense. They've already had a bye week. Like, it is ridiculous how bad they have been compared to any other team. It's not just the secondary. Like, their pass rush can't do anything, whatever you want to call it. They have been a quarterback's delight. And I think with Goff, the biggest issues for him is usually that pressure or just lockdown coverage, neither of which should be a problem this week. Would not be surprised at all if he goes for 300 plus and 3 or 4 scores. They've been a run first offense, but we saw that go away a little bit more last week. And I think that they just need to keep their foot on the gas against the Seahawks team. We've seen the Vikings, the Bills. When you play the Seahawks, NFL offenses get it. You throw the ball. I expect Sean McVay to realize that as well. And then, with Breeze, he looked awesome last week. And really this whole year, he hasn't had a game without multiple touchdowns or 300 passing yards. So we've been making fun of his, arm strength and all that, but he's still putting up numbers in this offense. And you have Michael Thomas back to that unit. It looked better than ever because they actually showed this new willingness to get not just Kamara and Thomas involved, but everybody involved. So, you can still stack them with Kamara and Thomas. I wouldn't recommend going to too many other guys other than maybe Emmanuel Sanders. But either way, high scoring offense, I think, against this 49ers team. So we don't have those rushing floors we like, which is why I wouldn't go with them in cash, but certainly still think they have a chance to go for 300 plus and a trio or more of scores.
Yeah, you mentioned Lock or Carr. I mentioned I like the over in that Raiders game. I'm looking at that game in tournaments. I think both quarterbacks a little bit too cheap. I like a lot of points. I like those team grades at PFF. Raiders defense, absolute dead last in team pass rush grade and second to last in coverage grade. That's going to give Lock as much time as he needs to hit Judy or Patrick or Hamler or Fant or whatever you want to do on offense there. I know the Raiders are efficient. Denver's defense is really nothing to worry about. They gave up 34 points to the Falcons last week. They let the Jets score 28 points on them, right? You can just keep going back here. What am I looking at? The Raiders, they gave up 28 to the Jets, 43 to the Chiefs, 30 to the Chargers, 34 to Atlanta. I don't see any reason why the Raiders can't put up a 30 spot. It just looks like an easy over in that game. So look to that for tournaments. Is there anyone else you really want to talk at the quarterback position?
Not really, man. I think we can move on to
Uh,
running back where
yeah,
things
let's
quite a bit
talk.
more clear.
Let's talk Mike Davis. Obviously, he's the cash lock. What is there any reason you see to not use him? And then what about in tournaments? Is he worth the 50, 60, upwards of 80% ownership in some of these contests on DraftKings this week?
I think in tournaments it could be worth fading. I mean, you look at his performance without Christian McCaffrey, he's been playing in every single game. But just like any running back, we see it when they were able to win these games and kind of get up on the scoreboard. That was when he was having his real big performances. When things didn't get quite as going, we saw them lean a little bit more on DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, as opposed to Mike Davis. But we saw them have this matchup before, and Davis only played 24 snaps, still found a way to get 8 receptions in garbage time. So it might be a case that the Buccaneers kind of run their prevent defense in such a way that Davis will be getting more check down opportunities if the game goes a little bit awry compared to what we saw kind of in those final games with him there. But I mean, at 4K, it's really hard to get away from him. I'm just talking about being contrarian in tournaments because cash games, I think you got to get him in there. And also with David Johnson being confirmed out, Duke Johnson at 5K is someone that in tournaments I'm probably going to be going up and trying to get Giovanni Bernard or just trying to avoid that range altogether. But Duke, I mean, again, 5K in a matchup where we got a revenge game storyline brewing, but just more than anything, even with the wind, should still be looking at 15 and 20 touches, even if I don't think it's going to be this, Chase Edmonds every down roll. And then finally, getting all the way up to Aaron Jones is probably going to be the most popular move. I mean, James Conner at 6,900. It was a weird bust last week because it wasn't that he wasn't on the field because there's another running back out there. The Steelers have just been randomly running a ton of empty over the past few games, and they fell behind, strangely enough, in that Cowboys one. So I like the bounce back potential for Conner in tournaments, but I think in cash game, you got to go Jones, Mike Davis, Duke Johnson, and I think that's probably going to be 70-80% of cash game lineups this week.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be the chalk combination. Aaron Jones, I'm maybe a little worried they give Jamal Williams a little bit more work, but I don't know. It's
Is
probably
he back for sure? He's been activated off COVID list.
I've not it did not cross yet, but we'll have to
Okay.
see what happens
We'll
on
see.
that one. But that looks to be the Davis Duke, Aaron Jones looks to be the chalk combination. What I like for tournaments, I'm trying to mix it up a little bit. Everyone's playing Aaron Jones. Give me some James Robinson. The Packers haven't stopped the run all season long. They're allowing 32 PPR points per game. I know Chris Thompson came back and ate into a couple of the passing down snaps, but Robinson still has 47 rush attempts and 8 targets over the past 2 games, basically an unheard of workload in 2020 for a running back. Why not play him in this game if it's sloppy? Maybe it's a closer game. They're able to run because teams aren't just able to pass the ball downfield. I want to note I've seen some things on Twitter where even Aaron Rodgers himself says the way the stadium's been changed over the past couple of years, it doesn't really affect the ball too much. But if the wind's whipping around 30 miles an hour sustained with big gusts, I'm going to tell you it's going to affect the ball getting passed through the air. So why not look for James Robinson? The Packers I don't think they have a great run defense at all. And the smart teams, right? They want you to run the ball against them because you're just going to score a lot less points if you run the ball every play. But that's fine in fantasy for the running backs we want to roster. It's really hard to find low-owned running backs that have a lot of upside, and he's going to be around 10%. That's basically my new threshold for a low-owned running back. I think he can get you there in tournaments.
Yeah, only guy to add to a tournament option is Miles Sanders at 6,400. Back, he's declared himself 100% healthy, and sitting at 6,400 still. You look at his past 2 matchups that we had him in, it was really rough against the Steelers and the Ravens. And he was sitting right in that same spot at 6,500. So it's almost like he was priced at that point because of the rough matchups, and now he's coming back. Post bye, seemingly 100% healthy. I mean, he was playing over 75% of their offensive snaps in all of his non-injury shortened games this year. So he's a workhorse that's being priced like he's in a much tougher matchup than he really is. So Sanders stacking with the Eagles defense, man, let's freaking ride in GPPs.
Yeah, I think that one's pretty interesting as well. Let's move to wide receiver. Cash games are going to look maybe this is the spot where there'll be a little bit of differentiation. If you have the money, Adams looks pretty good. Even in a win game, I'm still expecting him to be Devontae Adams and get his, I don't know, 10 to 15 targets and score a touchdown. That looks pretty good. But salary does come into play sometimes. I'm looking at Diggs. He only has 3 touchdowns on the year. I think some of that is Josh Allen's just so good inside the 10 that it sort of eats away at a couple receiving touchdowns here and there. But he leads the league in receptions and yards. Those count too. And you get the 100-yard bonus in this game, I think, pretty easily. A lot of plays. You mentioned the pace at the top of the show. It's in the dome. I like the over. Diggs is 7,500. You've got some really interesting plays. You've got DK Metcalf at 76, Michael Thomas at 74. Keenan Allen's going under the radar at 7,100. I really like that game with how for offense, a couple of key Miami defensive players have been just got ruled out a couple of minutes ago, and Kyle Van Noy, and then someone on the defensive line as well. So the Miami defense is going to be reeling. They're not going to get 6 fumble returns or interceptions every single time on defense. So I like Keenan Allen, very safe, but I think Diggs is safe with the upside this week to just have a monster game.
Yeah, and look, if you're going with Josh Allen as your QB, you need to have his number 1 wide receiver and Stephon Diggs there. Nobody else has more targets this season than Stephon Diggs. I think you could also slide down to John Brown, who is in another revenge game spot. Look, I love that storyline. And also, I just think last week, I mean, he's been banged up all year playing through it, but last week, him and to a lesser extent, Juju Smith-Schuster, I thought looked healthier than they had in quite some time. So always good to see those explosive guys getting on the right side of their health. I would say if you are going, Kyler Murray route, obviously you want DeAndre Hopkins in there at 7,700. Only had 3 targets last week. Guys, that's what we call an outlier. It's going to be okay. They're going to feed him the ball. Even if Tre'Davious White is out there, and we've seen Hopkins, not dominate this matchup over the past 2 seasons, but still put up plenty of points, specifically on Tre'Davious White. Look, it's DeAndre Hopkins. This guy can win against anybody, and the likely shootout, don't be surprised if he has his way in this spot. You can also go down to Christian Kirk, who's been absolutely balling out lately, really taking that field stretcher role for himself, sitting there at 5,700. I mean, really not all that pricey at all in this spot. So I think he makes a lot of sense. Again, mentioned before about, this Buccaneers offense. Don't, be afraid to go back to well with Antonio Brown at 5,800, just expecting the true kind of coming out party that we thought was going to be here last week. To your point about DK Metcalf, man, everyone's kind of expecting this to be a Tyler Lockett week, I think, because of Jalen Ramsey. Just realized
that was last week too, right?
Right. But
doesn't matter.
Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf week. There's been 1 week all year that wasn't DK Metcalf week, and that was the bonkers, Lockett 200 plus yards and 3 touchdowns against the Cardinals. Otherwise, this dude's had like 90 yards and or a touchdown every single game. So at some point, like Lockett and Metcalf are going to go off together. Could be this week. I know it's not, the greatest matchup, but again, this Russ Metcalf Lockett, they've been putting up so much numbers all year around. I mean, I know it's not the most ideal matchup, but always a viable tournament stack, particularly if we can get the reduced ownership there. Quickly, just some under 4K options you can use to help fill out your lineup. Chris Conley at 3K. I believe you said Laviska Shenault is out, so he's viable. Jakeem Grant at 3K. Josh Reynolds at 3,500. Get some, different exposure to that game. And KJ Hamler at 3,800 are more than viable. Last 2 points I have here. Mentioned that wind in Green Bay being a problem, but DJ Chark, over the last 4 weeks, DJ Chark has more air yards than literally anybody, and he's missed a game in that stretch. So Minshew, Luton, they're using Chark to get down the field, and I think he can win in a big way against this Jair Alexander-less Packers secondary. And then finally, Brandon Ayuk at 5,700, maybe my favorite wide receiver play of the week, man, just because, going into that last game where Richie James went absolutely bonkers, Troy Aikman said on the broadcast that, before they had all those wide receivers get rolled out, Kyle Shanahan told him that like 85% of their passing plays were just dialed up to go through Brandon Ayuk. And we saw this guy doing really big things with his opportunities before. So if Deebo Samuel was also coming back, that would be kind of cause for concern who's going to be the number 1 guy. But with Deebo out, with Kittle out, look, this is a Brandon Ayuk show in San Fran. He's got Kyle Shanahan designing any play he can to try to free him against, Saints secondary that, again, looked good last week, but more times than not this year has been pretty beatable. So absolutely love Brandon Ayuk at only 57K this week.
A couple guys I like Jerry Jeudy. I'm going back to the well on that. 14 targets last week. This Raiders defense is total trash. Love him in a tournament. I can't stress I do like that game for low-owned tournament plays. I don't know if you mentioned Connor at the running back spot. I don't know if he's going to be ultra chalky, but if you want to get a little leverage, maybe a Deontay Johnson, still just 5,200, and he gets a bajillion targets every game. I don't expect them to really fall behind against Cincinnati. weird things happen in the NFL. I wouldn't put it past it. And if you do use Connor, I think Connor with like Boyd or AJ Green, right, adding that stack to something else that you're doing, I think that makes a lot of sense in a tournament, because if Connor's cruising for 20 carries and 2 touchdowns, they're going to be chucking, and there's just going to be a bajillion pass attempts. You can even mix in Geo on that one. I think Connor and Geo even combined make a reasonable stack in that game because he fits the pass game. But a lot of good wide receivers I think you can look at for cheap out there. You mentioned Chark, he's 6,200, but I do like that one. I just traded for him in Dynasty today, so I'm glad he got to make the show. But yeah, wide receiver, a fun position. I think my 2 favorite, Judy and Deontay Johnson, as a little bit lower owned tournament plays. I want to mention to you guys, if you hear me talking about ownership, we talk about Gridiron IQ, all the cool stuff here on Rotogrinders. It's normally $40 a month, basically. If you want to get $5 off your first month here at Rotogrinders, we're offering a Core 4 discount for all new subscribers. You can go to rotogrinders.com/media/PFF, Pro Football Focus, and that will get you $5 off your first month here at Rotogrinders to check out all the cool stuff here. It should be literally, I feel like personally, Rotogrinders should be like $100 a month. So the suits, they like to keep it cheap for everybody. Let's go to the tight end position, and this is just basically the slate. We don't have Travis Kelce. George Kittle's out. We have Darren Waller. He gets a bunch of 5-yard targets, but a bunch of 5-yard targets at the end of the game look pretty good in fantasy. He far and away projects for the highest fantasy point total. And basically any system you look at out there in DFS, he's 5,900, which is usually like you do that and you feel like a donkey when Waller gets like 9 fantasy points and the rest of your lineup falls apart. But he looks basically locked in to really have a nice game. I like him in cash. The other guy I think that's drawing a lot of interest is going to be Dallas Goedert. Pay no attention to his 1-target game 2 weeks ago. There was a weird game script. It was all turnovers. Carson Wentz was getting hurried a lot. They kept him in to pass block and to run the ball a lot. I'm expecting him to basically be unleashed. We've got this week and maybe another week or 2 before Ertz comes back. Those are probably be my 2 options right now for cash games. You got to like them, Ian. There's really no way you can get around those 2.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I'd be more willing to get up to Waller if Goddard wasn't there, because I'm with you, man. I think without Ertz in the picture, Goddard's going to be a top 5 tight end here, from this point out. I think he's going to be in that 5K range as early as next week, potentially. But I would just say, looking at Waller, yeah, he's the most expensive tight end, but realize that he is the undisputed #1 pass game option in the Raiders offense. And if you just, take him, if you just take the position out of it and you look at him relative to other wide receivers, he's plenty affordable. I mean, he's right there with Antonio Brown, a little more expensive than Claypool, Christian Kirk, but cheaper than your Chris Godwins, your Jujus, your Robbie Andersons of the world. I mean, his target projection is higher than all these guys probably. So don't be afraid, even make a contrarian lineup. Why not Goddard and Darren Waller in the right spot? I do think they could have enough upside. No, I'm just saying, like Waller, he is a tight end, but truly is the #1 pass game option in that offense. But yes, and let's not get too crazy out here with 2. Only other guys I would mention in tournaments potentially, Eric Ebron at 4,400. He's been featured in the Steelers passing game. It's one of these situations where we don't know who it's going to be on a week-to-week basis, but with Vance McDonald kind of being in and out over these past few weeks, and just even when McDonald has been in the lineup, we've seen Ebron playing almost every single down. So certainly not a matchup against the Bengals I'm worried about. And Evan Ingram, man, like I don't know why Jason Garrett has been changing this offense so much over the past few weeks, but it is now Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram getting absolutely fed, and then it's everybody else. I mean, Darius Slayton has been really far removed from the equation. Golden Tate has been, just not even active over these past or at least last week, and now he's a little bit banged up as well. So Evan Ingram, 4,500 against an Eagles secondary that, really never replaced Malcolm Jenkins at that safety spot. We've seen them, really struggle against tight ends throughout the year. I understand he didn't blow up against them last time they played, but at some point, Evan Ingram, he's already been kind of flashing it a little bit. They've been finally using him more as a downfield receiver. I think we do kind of see that true blow up game that we know he's all capable of.
One I really like this week is going to be Gesicki, and you got to fade the Durham Smythe touchdowns, right? Well, those are super tilting when you roster Mike Gesicki. But I mentioned, at least on the chart or on the Miami defensive side, they're down some really good players for their defense, specifically Kyle Van Noy in the middle of that defense at linebacker. I think Gesicki, right? We got Preston Williams out. If you're not playing Jakeem Grant, who's going to be pretty popular, why not try out Mike Gesicki this week and expect him to maybe get into the end zone? And I think that Chargers offense is going to be able to put up points. I think Tua looked much better throwing the football in his second start here. So I'm looking at Gesicki as a low-owned tight end to have himself a pretty good week there. All right, let's move on and wrap this show up with the defense position. There's a couple. To me, it looks like the chalk defense is probably going to be the Saints. They're 3K, big home favorites against a completely decimated San Francisco offense and defense. So either way, I think if they're in catch-up mode, there's room for sacks and interceptions, and I think they can keep the point total possibly low. Although you like the over, maybe I'm going to have to rely on some sacks and interceptions and things like that to hit it with the Saints. But they look like the cash one. You got an interesting GPP play that I didn't think of, but I'll maybe add to it in a second. But the one we both agree on for tournaments is the Raiders. Even though I like the over in that game, it's Drew Lock slinging it around the yard. And when you got Drew Lock throwing the football, weird things can happen for defensive special teams touchdowns. So take a look at that. And those points count towards the over on my end of trying to score on that bet too. So if the Raiders get a pick six or a couple interceptions, I think that looks good. They're just 2,500. I want to talk to you on the your $2,200 defense because I think it's a little interesting. Russell Wilson's not playing as good with the football as he used to in terms of interceptions.
And that's the thing, man. Like I think in defensive selection, like too often we just want to target like these awful offenses. What we need is someone that's, going to take sacks, potentially turn the ball over. And ultimately we need, the defensive special team touchdowns to try to go out there and win these tournaments. So like, remember that game, that Rams Chiefs, just absolute shootout a couple of years ago? Like both teams scored over 50 points, but the Rams defense was still awesome because they scored like 2 defensive touchdowns on their own and had a couple sacks. That could be what we're seeing here with the Rams at 2,200. I mean, you would have to go up all the way to freaking, the high 3,000s to find a defense I think is as good as the Rams. The only reason their price is low is because they're playing Russell Wilson, the Seahawks. But you look at the way Russ plays, and I mean, this is a guy that makes, off script magic happen every single week. We get it. But similar to Deshaun Watson, I mean, when these quarterbacks drop back, they only have a couple choices when pressure comes. They can try to force the ball in somewhere immediately and risk a turnover. They can take a sack and live this play another down, or they can try to avoid that sack and make something happen. That's usually what Russell Wilson does. And because of that, he's taken multiple sacks in every single game this season. He took 5 last week. And the interceptions, man, when they're throwing the ball around this much and he kind of has to play this Superman card, they've been flowing too. I mean, he's had 2 picks last week, 0 before, but then went 3-1-1 in the 3 weeks before that. So, Russ, he's making more than enough big plays to make up for these issues. But again, this is a good Rams defense that could, take advantage of these few mistakes in a very big way. Only other 2 I would mention, just in terms of, I like the running back and defense special team stack, mentioned Miles Sanders and the Eagles. And also, I just think with the Lions sitting there at 2,600, like, again, we cannot give Alex Smith the benefit of the doubt at this point. I think, just the way he's playing and the way this offense seemingly just wants to live and die with bubble screens to JD McKissick. I don't see the Washington football team really being able to move the ball all that much, even if the Lions defense isn't good. And hey, mentioned before, DeAndre Swift has a pretty nice matchup in the trenches in terms of the combined yards before contact per rush. So don't love anything about this game as a whole, but I do think Swift and maybe the Lions defense could be a nice contrarian GPP stack as well.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for the Week 10 PFF show here on Rotogrinders. I'm going to go ahead to the sports book and get some bets in. Ian, you have yourself a good day. And as always, we appreciate you watching this live. We appreciate you downloading it on podcast, watching it on YouTube, however you like to consume this and all the other shows at Rotogrinders. A big hat tip to all you guys out there listening. Ian, till next week, my friend. I'll see you. Thanks for everybody for watching, and we out.